Joining us now is Andrea Saul, Mitt Romney for President National Press Secretary. Andrea, good morning and welcome to the John Frederick Show. We're the conservative voice of Virginia. It's great to have you back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, Andrea, some conservatives are becoming concerned that the Romney campaign is now playing defense. And somehow, in the midst of the worst U.S. economy since the Great Depression, President Obama has seized the initiative by attacking Mitt Romney relentlessly. How do you turn the tide on this?
Yeah, Governor Romney's always been focused on the economy and what he's going to do to turn the economy around. And, obviously that's not going to be the most exciting things that reporters want to talk about all day or those in the media, but, that's what we're focused on. And I think we had a very revealing comment from the president just this past week. And what he said is, if you've got a business, you didn't build that. Somebody else made it happen. It's just a shockingly revealing comment. It's completely dismissive of entrepreneurs and small business owners. And if you don't believe that they didn't build their business, that they don't create jobs or innovate or take risks, of course you think that small business owners should be hit with higher taxes to put into more government programs. President Obama thinks the government's responsible for everything, which explains why all he wants is more government spending, to double down on tax increases for more money for the government, and that's just not the answer.
Andrea, do you believe that statement by the president, some say it was taken out of text in a way, but do you believe that is perhaps a window into Barack Obama's soul?
Absolutely. This is a pattern with him. This is not the first time he said something like that. As you remember, he said that the private sector was doing fine when we have 8.2% unemployment. So this is exactly what he believes. He thinks government's the answer for everything and that, government deserves praise for our country's entrepreneurs. But the fact of the matter is, Steve Jobs did build Apple. Bill Gates did build Microsoft. The local dry cleaner and restaurant owner did build their businesses. And what Governor Romney's going to do, should he get in the White House, is unleash the private sector, lift the burden off of small businesses, instead of adding more excessive regulations and red tape for them to have to cut through. And so, he wants to make sure people can spend more of their own money and make their own decisions instead of government bureaucrats making those for them.
Right. Now, Andrea, Governor Romney's tax returns are becoming a major distraction in this campaign. Why doesn't Governor Romney just release the documents in the same fashion his dad did in 1967 and put this whole issue to bed?
Well, he's already released his full tax returns for 2010, including his wife's and his family's findings, and released an estimate of 2011 and said he'll release it as soon as it's finished, which is honestly, it's over 500 pages of publicly released documents on top of all of his public disclosures. And at the end of the day, no matter how many release, the Obama campaign's going to continue asking for more and more. And that's because they're desperately trying to change the subject from President Obama's abysmal economic record. President Obama in the last campaign said that if you don't have a record to run on, you're going to make the campaign about small things. And that's exactly what he's doing. No matter how many distractions and distortions the Obama campaign puts out, it's not going to put one more American back to work.
Well, that's true. But we do, as we observe, we do have to say that strategy is gaining traction. Now, President Obama has made scurrilous attacks on Bain Capital that, frankly, virtually every media watchdog has condemned as myths, truths, or blatant falsehoods, including the very liberal Washington Post. Yet now we understand that the Obama for President campaign took $120,000 in campaign donations from Bain. I mean, is that just not the height of hypocrisy?
Absolutely. And not only that, Democrats and the DNC, who have been attacking Bain Capital as well, have been taking donations for years and much more than that. And here they are, Bain money's paying for anti-Bain attacks. But the fact of the matter is, what President Obama doesn't understand and what his campaign doesn't understand is that someone who's worked in the real-world economy understands how to balance a budget, has created jobs, understands what it takes to keep businesses here in the U.S. creating jobs here. What President Obama's done is he's put burdens on businesses so that they either can't hire anymore, they're, having to cut wages, or they're shipping jobs overseas. And that's just not the answer to get our economy going again.
Now, Andrea, your campaign has recently criticized the president for practicing what you've termed political cronyism with taxpayer dollars. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. We've talked about how while there are middle-class layoffs, President Obama has political payoffs. And basically, while the middle-class Americans are suffering, President Obama's political pals are doing fine because he steered taxpayer dollars their way. If you look at the stimulus, for instance, Solyndra went bankrupt, costing taxpayers more than $500 million and more than 1,000 workers their jobs, and it was linked to one of his donors. Another one, Fisker, received $500 million, but manufactures cars in Finland while its plant in Delaware remains empty. And so there are just example after example of President Obama steering, stimulus money and government contracts to his friends. So, yeah, they might be doing fine, but the everyday American is suffering.
Andrea, on the campaign stump this week in Virginia, President Obama said that he wanted to rebuild the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. And that was the thought process behind his policy of not extending the Bush tax cuts for people earning over $250,000. But many economists and virtually every Republican has said that that's going to be a jobs killer. How do you see this playing out? And what is Mitt Romney's plan in a nutshell to get the economy to start to grow and create jobs?
Yes. Well, two things. First off, on President Obama's plans, as you mentioned, after it came out that we were at 8.2% unemployment this past month, President Obama's answer was two things. One, to raise taxes. And as you mentioned, raising taxes on job creators is not going to get them hiring again. And number two, he wants to strip out the established work requirements from welfare. So basically, he wants to raise taxes on job creators and make it so that we can give handouts to folks regardless of if they're working or not. And that's just not the answer. Governor Romney has a lot of plans. He actually put out a 59-point plan to get the economy going again, and it relies on, cutting through the red tape. He wants to overturn Obamacare and get spending under control. He, wants to unleash our domestic energy resources so that we can become energy independent and it can help drive down gas prices. And there are even things he can do on day one. Approve the Keystone Pipeline, which will, help create jobs in the short term and the long term here at home. Get tough on China. We sell, many goods. We buy, constant goods from China, but aren't selling near as much to them. And that's just a lopsided agreement. We need to get tough on them and, taking our copyrights and, reproducing things in America so that we can actually reap the benefits of the things that we create. On the tax front, he wants to reform the tax code, simplify it, lower the corporate tax rate and the individual tax rates. So again, we can unleash the profits back into the economy and let the free market do its thing.
Okay, Andrea, we appreciate the time that you took with us today, and we look forward to having you back. Thank you, Andrea, so much.
Thank you so much.